Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our second, well, it's our second Mishlei shiur, but it's our first Mishlei shiur because the first one was really an introduction, and it was also so long ago that it's practically a new shiur now. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to, or with the plan at least, is we're going to start with Mishlei chapter 10, pasuk aleph. Okay, and just to review the structure of Mishlei, which we talked about in our intro last time, Mishlei has, depending on how you count it, I like counting it with 5 sections. Okay, so you've got chapter 1 through 9, which is the introduction to Mishlei. Then you've got 10 through 24, which is the bulk of Mishlei Shlomo. Okay, and then from 25 to 29 is the Mishlei Shlomo that were written by Anshe Chizkiyahu, which is Shlomo's content, but different, I guess, formulation because the style is very different. And then 30 through like half of 31 is like weird, what I call weird Mishlei. It's weird because structurally it's very different than all of them, and it's like got very, very elaborate mashalim and stuff. And then the last part in 31 is Ashes Chayil. Okay, so we are starting with 10:1 because it is the beginning of Mishlei proper, of where Shlomo goes through his actual Mishlei style mashalim. Okay, 1 through 9 are all intro, and this is like the Mishlaic Mishlei. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to teach this the way that I would a high school class, or the way that I give my Mishlei in yeshiva, which is we're going to learn through it together, okay? And we will probably average 1 pasuk per session, okay? That's usually the going rate of progress here. Especially the more people we have, then the more discussion we have, and the more methodology we have. I should actually say this also because I don't know of the people who are here. It's possible that you've learned today's pasuk with me. Okay, so if so, then try to forget it. Okay, or try to think originally. And that's the challenge with Mishlei is, if you have learned this pasuk before, maybe not with me, but if you learned it before, then the challenge is to try to think of it afresh. And I've told this story before, but I'll say it again. My Mishlei Rebbe is Rabbi Moskowitz, and he has a horrible memory. And he would always say he has a horrible memory. And whenever he would teach a pasuk in Mishlei, we can ask him the next day, like a question based on what he said the day before, and he'll say that he forgot it and he'll mean it. Certainly, like if you're talking about, Rabbi Moskowitz, didn't we do this 2 summers ago? Like, forget about it. And so learning with him has really trained me to try to approach things fresh. And it takes a long time. Like it used to be that I could not do the same pasuk and think freely about it. Like I would need to give it like 3 years in between, but I've gotten better at it, of like clearing my mind of stuff. And so if you've learned this pasuk before, let's try to approach it fresh. Okay. One more thing is, speaking of Rabbi Moskowitz, Rabbi Moskowitz taught me the derech halimud in Mishlei, and I have retained much of it and also developed some of my own. So this is not just a Mishlei ideas shiur. This is a Mishlei methodology shiur. So whenever I see an opportunity to point out a methodological principle, then I'll point it out, even if it kind of takes us a little bit far afield. And the goal is, if you stick with this shiur, so then not only will you get individual Mishlei ideas, but you'll also walk away with having internalized the tools that you need to learn Mishlei and to maybe teach Mishlei one day also. So that's going to be the goal here. Okay, so any questions about what we're doing before we do it? All right. Oh, and I'll say also, because there are the number of participants here such that I cannot have you all on the screen at the same time. So if you have a question, just unmute yourself and interrupt, because I can't see if you're raising your hand. Okay, so Mishlei Shlomo ben David, sorry, not Ben David. Mishlei Shlomo. I'm thinking of the first part of Mishlei. Mishlei Shlomo : Ben Chacham Yisamach Av Uven Ksil Tugas Imo. Now, I'm going to walk you through my procedure. Okay, I got my little order of operations here. So first thing I try to do when I see a pasuk is I try to translate it on my own. Okay, and on my own sometimes includes using a dictionary. In this case, we'll see if we need a dictionary. Any brave soul wants to take a stab at translating this. This is not on the Mishlei difficulty scale. This is fairly easy. There might only be one word that gives you trouble. Go ahead. Anyone just jump in.
The Proverbs of Shlomo.
Good.
The son of either the son of a chacham or a son who is a chacham.
Good.
Gladdens his father, and a son either the son of Ixiel or the son who is Ixiel is, I think tugas means like gnashing your teeth. I think I
if that's the case, I've never heard it before, but it's possible that is the case.
Yeah, of his mother.
Okay, good. So let's say I'm going to actually just put this in 2 lines here because it's going to look weird if I put it all together. So the son of a wise man. How do you say Yisamach of?
Gladdens his father.
Gladdens his father. Okay, that's good. But sorry, you know what? I'm going to do a different one first. A wise son. I'm going to go with that. And the only reason I'm going with that first is because I think that is the mainstream approach here. A wise son gladdens his father, but a foolish son tugas imo. Okay. Anyone else have a translation? So you said gnashing?
Yeah, like gnashing teeth.
Okay. I'm very curious about it. I've never heard that before. Anyone has a different definition of tugas?
Does it mean like grief?
Yeah. Okay, good. Grief is the more standard definition. Okay, good. I'm gonna put gnashing on the side here. Okay. Tugas equals gnashing? Question mark. I don't mean to be. Actually, I do mean to show how skeptical I am with 3 question marks. Okay. The foolish son is the grief of his mother. Okay. And then the other way to say it is, and just for the sake of this, I'm going to delete the Proverbs of Solomon just so we can keep it on one line because that really is not part of the pasuk. Okay, that's like the intro of the section. So the other one is a son of a wise man. A son of a wise man gladdens his father, but a son of a foolish man So this is interesting, right? A foolish man, would you say? It's both going on the man. Isaac?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Is the grief of his mother. Okay. So this is stage 1 of learning Mishlei, is translating the pasuk. Now, my stage 1, again, you do you, all right? So my stage 1 of translating is I try to translate it on my own using a dictionary if need be. Then I go to I have 2 more components of stage 1. The first stage is so the whole derech, as I explained in the intro, is we learn the pasuk on our own first. And then after we learn it on our own, we look at the mafarshim and compare what we came up with to what they came up with. And either we'll find that someone says it interprets the pasuk the way we do, and then we'll be able to compare them and see like where our nuances, where we differ in the nuances. Or we'll find that no one says what we did, which either means that we came up with an original idea, which is possible, or we made a huge mistake, which is more possible. And then we'll correct it. So, but before we look at the mafarshim and before we even try to come up with our ideas, we want to exhaust the translations. Okay. So what I like to do is I like to look at what I call my minimalist mafarshim, my 3 go-to minimalist mafarshim, and they are, I put them at the bottom here. Hold on. The Targum. That did not work. Oh, the Targum Ksuvim, the Targum Sa'adya Ga'on, and the Metzudas ציון. Okay, so Targum translation is the minimal level of commentary, right? You cannot translate without interpreting to some extent. So, this is like for me looking at Mefarshim without hearing their ideas. This is like they're not going to be saying their whole ideas; they're just giving word translations. And so first thing we do is we look at the Targum. Okay, so Masloi de Shlomo Barcha Kima Nechde Avui Ubra Sachla Mechametz L'imeh. Now, those of you who are semi fluent in Aramaic, did any word jump out at you as being like a clear interpretation and not just a straight translation?
Mechametz is like vinegar, right?
Yes, exactly, right? So Mechametz, right, so he's translating tuga as mechametz. Okay, so he's saying I guess sours his mother. Okay, so that is, I don't know if that is just an idiomatic rendition of tuga, of grief, or if that is actually like a different interpretation here, or if he's somehow like getting that from the word tuga, like maybe Isaac, maybe when you drink vinegar, you gnash your teeth a lot. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay,
I looked it up in gesture what I thought I remembered, and I was just wrong.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, so then Sa'adya Ga'on had a translation of I believe the entire Tanakh into Arabic, And there is a version of the Sa'dya that I have that takes the Arabic translation and translates it back into Hebrew. So if you look here, Umi Mishlei Shlomo haben hakacham yisamach aviv, v'haben haksil tugas imo. Now it tuga leimo. So it looks like the changes are very subtle, but if you pay attention, he is actually taking a stance. He's weighing in on something that an ambiguity that we noted here. What is he adding, or what is he clarifying?
Haben hachacham.
Yes, haben hachacham. So he is saying that it is not translation number 2. Okay, we're crossing it out not because it's wrong, but like I said, it's not the mainstream. And I think this is going to be the easier route to go, just for our purposes here. Okay, so the wise son, right? The wise son and the foolish son. Okay, foolish son. Okay. Then we have Mitsudas ציון, who is not going to give a full translation. He's just going to take any obscure terms and translate them for us. So here he chooses tuga, and he says it's miloshin yagon v'itzavon. Okay, so yagon. What's your favorite definition of yagon? You could have a lot of synonyms here.
Travail.
Do you say travail or prevail?
Travail.
Travail. Okay, travail.
Agony.
Agony. Yeah, I like agony. I like agony better. I don't like agony, but I like the translation agony. And itzavon is what? Last week's parsha.
Pain.
So I think etzev is pain, right? I think itzavon.
Depression.
And sorry, I also think ka'ev is pain. Right? I think. What did you say? Someone said something else.
Depression.
Compassion.
Depression.
Oh, depression. Yes, depression. Yes. Yeah, depression. Yeah, I think depression is like is the more what do you call it? Go-to definition. So we can modify as we want. Obviously, part of our question here is going to have to be how do we interpret tuga in the pasuk? Like even these translations, even though these translations are here, then we still need we still need to interpret it when we learn the pasuk. And then the last stage of the translation phase I do is I consult 3 English translations. And the reason for this is because even though I consider myself to be, fairly fluent in translating, you got these people who are publishing translations who spend their whole lives studying Hebrew. And at the very least, we should consider what they say. So my current go-to 3 go-to translations are, let me move them up here. Art Scroll, Living Nach, and Altar. Okay, and just a few notes on each of these. Art Scroll, I don't know who translated the Art Scroll on Mishlei per se, but Art Scroll will typically err on the side of Rashi or Mitzudos. Okay, and I think that is an editorial decision. I think they just consistently do that. So just be aware of that when you're looking at Art Scroll. Again, I'm going to erase Proverbs of Solomon just because it's not really part of the pasuk. Living Nach, I don't know if they consistently go with someone. But I found that their translation is often more readable than the Art Scroll, and also they have a digest of more commentaries at the bottom, so that helps. And then Alter is someone who is new. He's very popular in academic circles, and the only reason I know of him is that I feel like everyone who is in the learning world either is or has a diktuk friend. And by diktuk friend, I mean someone who just really, really knows Hebrew grammar very well, and they can explain to you all those crazy symbols that the grammarians use, and get meaning out of them. So I noticed that all of my Orthodox Jewish diktuk friends, not all of them, many of them online, make recourse to Alter, even though he's a secular translator. He single-handedly translated the entire Tanakh, and it took a long time. And he consults modern scholarship and medieval mefarshim. He'll quote Rashi and Ibn Ezra right alongside Ugaritic burial sites and tablets and stuff like that. And he's a very independent thinker. And one of the things he does is he tries often to preserve the poetry of the Hebrew, which in Mishlei sometimes is very important because Mishlei is a poetic book. And in books like Tehillim and Eov, very, very important, but he's very skilled at that. So here, I'm only telling you this because this is part of my method. Here, I don't think it's really going to have any chiddushes. Okay, so a wise son gladdens his father, but a foolish son is his mother's sorrow. That's essentially the same as what we did. So we're going to delete Art Scroll. Okay, by Art Scroll. A wise son brings his father joy, but a foolish son is his mother's grief. That's essentially the same. Delete that. A wise man gladdens his father, but a foolish son is his mother's sorrow. Same. Okay, so this is not always the case. Okay, many times you'll get an extreme clash of English translations, and then you have to like have a real workout. It's kind of fortunate that the first pasuk in Mishlei is fairly straightforward translation-wise, so we don't get bogged down in translation this time around. Okay, so let's do this. Let's clean this up, and then we'll start analyzing the pasuk. And Isaac, unless like you find a manuscript like in the Cairo Geniza that says gnashing, we're going to delete gnashing. Okay, we'll leave this here. Okay, so now we are in the questions and problems phase. So this is phase 2 of learning Mishlei. This is where we list any and all questions and problems that we have. Even if it seems obvious, even if it seems like a dumb question, we always have to ask it because sometimes the simplest questions are the best questions or the most fundamental questions, or sometimes we think we know something and the point of the pasuk is to cause you to see it in a new light, you know? And if you don't ask the question and you just assume that you know, so then you're just going to miss out on updating your understanding. So what are the questions we have to ask here?
Why did Shlomo use vague language that could be interpreted as ben chacham or ben ha-chacham?
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm actually not going to list that in our questions because that's more of a broad Mishlei methodology question, which I'm going to answer now, okay, before we get into the analysis, okay? And by the way, I don't know how much you've learned Mishlei, but you ain't seen nothing yet, okay, unless you've seen something yet. But this pasuk is like one little ambiguity. If you want a doozy, okay, then on my YouTube channel, if you go to pasuk 18:1, okay, it's like, the pasuk is like I mean, I've used this analogy before about in general, it's like a Rubik's Cube, okay? It's like every word can be translated in 2 or 3 ways, and the entire process of finding it is like a combination where you move one thing and it creates another problem here, and you move another thing and it creates another problem there. So the question is, why did Shlomo write it this way? Shlomo certainly was a chacham mikol adam, and if the Rambam can write clearly in the Mishnah Torah and Rashi can write clearly in his commentary, certainly the Rambam, Shlomo HaMelech can write clearly in Mishlei. So why might he? I'll pose the question to you, right? So why might he write in ways that are ambiguous?
Maybe there's two different ways to learn this, and both of them are equally valid.
Okay, good. So this is the principle of economizing of proverbs. Okay, is that in fact, actually, this is a halakha. Hold on. I just remember it's a halakha. Let me find it. This is. Let me stop sharing the screen for 1 second so that I can share this window. Okay, so if you look in, oops, sorry, I went to the wrong site. Hilchos in the Rambam, which we will get here. Sorry, I find that on my computer, this site goes very slowly when I'm running Zoom. So that's why I'm slowing down my old speech. So Mishnah Torah, Sefer Hamada, Hilchos Talmud Torah, halachos about how Talmidim and Rebbeim should relate to each other. I think it's here. Oh no, it's in Hilchos Deos. Sorry, it is in Hilchos Deos. It is about how they should relate to each other, but it's in Hilchos Deos, I believe. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. So he's talking about speech. Rama's talking about speech and how a chacham speaks. And he says, V'chein b'divrei Torah u'v'divrei chachma, same thing in words of Torah and words of chacham, Yihu divrei hachacham me'atim v'inyanehem merubim. Okay, that their chacham's words should be few and his concept should be many. Okay, I have abandoned this long ago in speech. Okay, I feel like that's not my style, and in writing I'll try to be concise if I can, but not in speech. This is what the Chachamim commanded and said, "L'olam yishne adam l'talmido derech katzara." A person, here it means a rav, really should always teach a student in a concise manner. Im hayu ha'devarim merubim va'inyan muat harzo sichlus. If the ideational content, if the words are many and the ideational content is minute, harzo sichlus, this is a folly. Valzeh Nemar, and this is what Shlomo meant in Koheles when he said, Ki ba hachalom barov inyan, v'kol ksil barov devarim. A dream comes in an abundance of preoccupation, and the voice of a ksil is in an abundance of words. The voice of a fool is in an abundance of words. So that's answer number one of why Shlomo did this is the more ideas he can teach in one pasuk, the better. And especially in the proverb form, because the whole idea of a proverb is it's by design a short statement which is designed to be memorable and for you to be able to recall it. So if he can incorporate multiple ideas into the wording of the pasuk, then it's more efficient in his teaching. He's more efficient in his teaching, and ambiguity, deliberate ambiguity, is a way to do that, of using phrases that can be read in one of two ways. So that's one reason. Okay, good. Anyone else have a theory?
I have a question on the pasuk.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Got to do methodology first.
Oh,
The Rambam has okay. Let me just plagiarize the Rambam. So the Rambam in the end of the Pirush Mishnayos on brachos there's a point where he goes off topic and he says that he says we've already gone far afield, but whenever I get to something that is a yesod in Emunah, like one of the Yesodei Torah, then I stop and explain a little bit because the Yesodos are more precious than anything that I teach. So he feels the need to like say that. So I do the same thing with Mishlei methodology. Like more important than the Mishlei itself, the ideas themselves in a particular shiur is like teaching you how to learn Mishlei. So I feel like this is worth spending time on, even though we're not getting into the pasuk yet. So yeah.
Isn't there a danger to this? Because let's say there are 3 interpretations, but only 2 of them are valid.
Right.
Can you lead to wrong ideas?
Right. So you are running the risk of ambiguity here. And in fact, there's a pasuk in Mishlei about that. Okay, that says, hold on. And it's not exactly about that in those exact terms, but it's a mashal about like this, the nature of this danger here, is in Mishlei 26:9, choach ala biad shikur umashal b'fi ksilim. Like a thorn in the hand of a drunkard, so is a mashal in the hand of fools. Okay, and I guess we'll have to, in what year is this? 2020. So I don't know when we're going to get to 26:9. When we get to that, we'll have to like interpret it in depth. But the mashal, or the just simple meaning of the mashal is that just like a drunkard will hurt himself and other people with when he's grabbing onto a branch of thorns, so too a fool who misunderstands a mashal is going to end up getting the wrong idea or teaching the wrong idea and like hurting other people. So yeah, you're running a risk by making it ambiguous, which is why I'll tell you my other answer. One of the other answers here is in the beginning of Mishlei. One of the purposes of Mishlei, okay, is, so he says ladas chachma musar, to know wisdom and discipline, lahavin imre bina, to understand statements of understanding, okay? And then later on, according to, okay, this is Isaiah's shot from the before times. Last time we learned in over here, back when we could go over to each other's houses and learn on Shabbos. Isaiah cracked the code, I believe, that pasuk 6 is an elaboration on the end of pasuk 2. I think that was Isaiah. Lahavin mashal melitza divrei chachamim v'chidosam. So what does it mean to understand statements of understanding? It means to decode mashal, melitza, divrei chachamim v'chidosam. And if you look at the Mefarshim there, they pretty much all say that those are 4 different types of mashalim that are found in Mishlei. The point, though, is that one of the objectives of the book is to teach you how to decode allegorical statements, to teach you how to decode Mishlei. And the reason for that is that the Chachamim, all of the greatest Chachamim state their ideas in mashal form, in allegory. Like in our, I mean, the one we're most familiar with is Midrashei Agada, is Midrashim. Nevi'im also stated in mashal. So you got to run the risk. Like that's when you're teaching any skill, you're exposing someone to something that they may not be able to do in order to teach them how to do it. So yes, you are running a risk, but it's part of his goal. And so yeah, you'll get some fools running around with with mashalim, like drunkards with thorns, but that's the risk that Shlomo is willing to take. So that's my second answer, is that he's trying to teach you how to decode mashalim. So learning how to dissect the pasuk and like get the ambiguities and know how to read it is another benefit. And I'll say a third one, and then we'll move on to the pasuk, just because we're almost at the halfway mark here. The third one is that it seems like, according to everybody, Mishlei can be learned on two levels. Okay, there's what is I like the Meiri's terminology here: the derech nigle and the derech nister, the surface meaning and the internal meaning. And there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, let me see it here. Hold on. I should. Was I even sharing the window before? I guess I wasn't, or maybe I was. Hold on. Let me just look here. You know what? I'm just going to share my full screen. That way I can toggle back and forth between the internet and the this thing. Okay, hold on a second. Moss. So this is another. The Rambam actually applies to Mishlei in his discourse on Mashalim in the beginning of the More Nevuchim. Tapuche zahav v'maskios kesef davar al ofenav. So like golden apples encased in silver. Okay, so is a statement made in its proper ways, I guess you would say. So the idea there is that every Mishlei pasuk has an external meaning and an internal meaning, or maybe multiple external meanings and multiple internal meanings. And the mashal of gold and silver is that the internal meaning, the hidden meaning, is the most valuable, but the external meaning is silver. It also has value. So sometimes the ambiguity does not come from the fact that does not come from the surface level meaning. In other words, maybe if he were only writing a surface level meaning, he would write it in a direct way. But sometimes, for the sake of the hidden meaning, then you're going to have to use an ambiguous language. Okay, I'll give you an example of this in Mishlei 17:1. Okay, 17:1 says pas tov pas v'shalva mi bayis mali zivche riv, which means better a stale piece of bread with tranquility in it than a house filled with contentious meat. Okay, so that's the pshat. So tov pas v'shalva ba mi bayis mali zivche riv. Better a piece of stale bread or dry bread with tranquility in it than a house filled with contentious meat. So that's the pshat, okay? But if you look at Rashi, which is not how I learn Mishlei, it's another methodology point. I don't use Rashi on Mishlei because Rashi only does the nister meaning, and it's not the nister the way that I understand or am on the level for yet. But this is a good example. Tov haya lakadosh baruch hu lahachariv beso ve'iro v'haya b'shalva me'al ve'rosein shel Yisrael. Better for God to destroy his house, meaning his temple and his city, and for it to be in peace or tranquility from the sins of the Jews, mi bayis mali zivche riv, than houses filled with zivche riv, not zevach as in meat, but b'hashayim akrivim zivche riv beveso, that they would offer korbanos of contention in his house. So here, if Shlomo just wrote it for the simple external meaning, so then he might have used like a different word for dry and a different word. He might have said basar for meat, instead of zivche. But because he wants to also allude to a hidden meaning, and he's talking about the Churban Beis HaMikdash because of Korbanos, so then he uses this deliberately ambiguous language. So in other words, the ambiguity might not be for our purposes when we're learning it according to the external meaning. It might be ambiguous because of the internal meaning, and that's what dictated this. So those are the three answers I know of about why he writes deliberately ambiguously. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we ready to get back to questions on the pasuk now? So Ariel, you had a question on the pasuk, right?
Yes. My question is, what's the relationship between the father and his children and the mother and his children?
Okay, good.
It sounds like because it's funny because usually, like the second half of the pasuk is it's like a direct contrast within the first one, but it's switching to the, from the father to the mother.
Okay, good. So I'm gonna put it in general terms here, just to allow for maximum flexibility in the question. So what is this pasuk saying about the relationship between the father, the mother, and the son? Okay, and you're pointing out that like the pasuk does have the son relating to the father in a good way in the first half, and then the mother relating to the bad son in the second half, right? So that's really where your question's coming from, right? Like, is there a more intrinsic relationship between the mother or her feelings and the foolish son, and then the father and his feelings and the chacham son?
Well, it's funny. The first way you put it was how I came to your second reasoning
Okay.
for the question.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we are actually going to return to this question as the first part of our even before we start answering things, because we'll see that this is another split in how to translate the pasuk, even though it doesn't look like it. So good question. All right, what else do we need to understand here? What are the other questions or problems? So one tip here is always ask basic definition questions. Okay, what is a ben chacham, and then what is a ben ksil? Okay, and the reason why this is important, why do we need to ask this? Like, just on a pshat level, I mean, not like a sophisticated understanding level, but pshat wise, what are the possibilities here? Or like, why is this an important question? I know that's a very vague question, but like, if you just think about ben chacham, what ambiguities or possibilities come to your mind that need to be resolved?
Well, chacham could mean maybe like smart or like intelligent, but it also could mean like wise.
Okay, good.
Maybe, like,
so I guess, so one element of the question is the question we have anytime we see a chacham and a ksil, which is what is a chacham, okay, and then what is a ksil, okay. But I think that there's an additional layer of ambiguity posed by the phrase ben.
Why not just say chacham? Why say ben?
Okay, right. So why not just a chacham? Oh, sorry. Why not just say chacham instead of ben? And then the fact that they are saying ben, what does that lead you to think it means? Like, obviously every chacham is a son. Okay. Right? He's the son of somebody. So presumably he's going to make his father happy and all the same, right?
Maybe it's like a kid?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, right? Instead of Ben, right? So the question is, how old is this Ben Chacham? Okay, are we talking here about an adult son whose father is happy when he sees his son's success? Or are we talking about like a 5-year-old who's like showing promise to becoming a Chacham, or like a 10-year-old who is a chacham and is under his father's care, or vice versa? And it's going to be a big, that's a big question, because it's going to affect how we learn the facts of the pasuk. You know, like a ben ksil who's a 5-year-old. I mean, is that just like a developmentally delayed kid who doesn't know how to like let the other kid take a turn on the slide, or is it like a guy who's like gambling away all his parents' money and spending it on booze? You know, like it's two big things. Same thing with the chacham. Like, does it mean that he is actually intelligent and smart, or does it mean that he's smart in decision making? So like, these are all questions that need to be answered. Okay, good. And see, you see what happened here, right? This is the perfect thing where like, it's very easy to just dismiss the question, but when we ask it, we start realizing that there's a lot more to be discovered here, and then that leads deeper into the pasuk.
Are we also assuming that the mother does not relate to the son the same as the father? I mean, it only causes grief to the mother and not the father.
Okay, good. So that was what I was alluding to when I said the further ambiguity in Ariel's question here. And I'm actually going to show this to you in the Mefarshim so that you don't have to trust me, and you could see it in the Mefarshim themselves. Oh, hold on. I am screen sharing. Okay, good. All right. So who did I like who said this? Oh, sorry. It was on a different document here. Okay, so look at the Meiri here. Okay, so the Meiri, and we're not going to ignore his actual peers here. Okay, wait, or is it possible to ignore it? Yeah, try to ignore it. Okay, I'm just going to read his reading of the words. Okay, so he says like this. Kavar bi'arnu, we've already explained shit. Miderech halashon lahaskir shnei nosim uliachas nasu echad b'chol echad. So we've already explained that it is the manner of it's the style of the language. I don't know if he means the Hebrew language or like biblical Hebrew language, to ascribe to take two subjects and ascribe them and to ascribe one predicate to each one. Okay. Okay, so I don't know my grammar terminology well enough. I'll tell you what he means though when we go on. But by way of eloquence, then it will repeat it in a divided way. So let's see what he means. We'll bring an example of this. Or zarua latzadik uli yishrei lev simcha. So it says in Tehillim, light is sown, like planted, sown for the tzaddik, and simcha for the upright of heart. She'ein hakavana lishlol hasimcha min hatzadik v'haor min hayashar. The intent is not to negate simcha from the tzaddik and or from the yashar. Okay. Alval hakavana liyaches shnehem lishnehem. Really, it's ascribing both of them to both of them. Litain es ha'amor shel zeh bazeh. To say what was said about this one. It's as if it's one statement. So in other words, he's interpreting it like this. Or zarua v'simcha latzadik uli yishrei lev. So both are applying to both. Ella shemitachsis hamalita, but due to the conventions of poetry, lichpol inyan b'milshonos is to repeat it in different words. So if you apply that to this, v'chein hakavana sheben hachacham yisamach molidav, Rotzelomar ha'av v'ha'em. Hu tugas shnehem gamkein. Okay, so really it's saying, according to that, the wise son gladdens his parents, meaning his father and his mother, and the fool causes grief to both of them also. Ella shederach tzachos yiches ha'achas la'av ha'acheres le'em. But just by way of poetry, it is ascribing one to the father and one to the mother. So that's one way to read it. And the other way to read it is the way that Ariel was assuming, or the way that that Elisa was asking about. It's saying like specifically, the wise son specifically makes his father happy, but not his mother, or not as much his mother. And then the foolish son specifically is grief to his mother, but not so much his father. Okay, so
wait, Matt, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, I'm going to type it out just so you can see it. Okay, is this saying a wise son gladdens his parents and a foolish son is his parents' grief? Okay, or is it saying a wise son gladdens his father specifically, but not necessarily his mother, and a foolish son is his mother's grief, but not necessarily his father's?
Oh, I don't. Can there be a third option?
What would that be?
I was thinking that a wise son gladdens both his parents, and a foolish son brings grief to his mother, but not necessarily his father.
Okay, so that I do not accept. Okay, and I'll tell you why.
Why not?
It's asymmetrical. Okay. And I would need further evidence in the pasuk to state that. Like, I just don't think that is the, like, both of the Meiri's approaches here basically like account for a certain consistency in explanation. I don't see any evidence that like the chacham is going on both of them and the ksil is only going on the mother. Because then why you say the other way also? And maybe you would say the other way also is like, that maybe the foolish son brings grief to both of his parents, but the wise son only makes his father happy. It's just, I don't buy that. And I haven't seen a single of the Mefarshim that says that. Not that that's a proof, like you can read it that way if you want, but I just don't think it's elegant. And I didn't see any support in the Mefarshim.
Well, I guess my question is why would it be appropriate if we are assuming that it's both the parents?
Why would it be appropriate linguistically, or what's the idea?
Meaning like your answer, thing A, like 1A. Why is it appropriate to assume it's both of his parents? Meaning, because why not just stick literally with the pasuk?
So the Meiri says that that's a style in Hebrew, that is how Hebrew works, and he brings many examples of this. And he says just for the sake of poetry. I mean, I'm sure you can find examples of this in English also. I'm not having an idiom that comes to mind. right now, but like, you know, just for the sake of, I mean, you see this in songs also, like you could have said a song like differently, but like it's easier to say it, you know, it flows smoother to say it this way. So I'm taking him for you know, on authority that this is a Hebrew thing. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just going to list a few more questions, and then we got to start interpreting it because we don't have much time here.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
About just, I think of a proverb as having something practical, some practical
That was
lesson
exactly
to
what I
hold
was
on
going to
to.
say. Very
Like
good.
an apple a day keeps the doctor away, or the early bird catches the worm. There's nothing here that says like, how can you prevent yourself from having a foolish son, or how can you be sure that you have a wise son?
Okay, good. So there's a question that you're asking, and then there's also an implicit premise, or the premise that you're assuming. So the question you're asking is a question we have to ask on every pasuk in Mishlei. What is the practical application of this pasuk in everyday decision making? And based on the approach, remember the approach we're taking here is Sa'dya Ga'on, who says that this is a guide to pleasure. Mishlei is a guide to maximizing long-term pleasure and avoiding long-term pain, and avoiding the type of short-term pleasure that leads to harmful consequences, and the long-term and the short-term pain, and enduring the short-term pain that would lead to good benefits. So there are other styles of learning Mishlei that's talking about like ideas in mitzvos, or ideas in you know, metaphysics. I'm sure there are people who learn it that way. Sa'dya learns it as practical decision making. So we need to, at the end of the day, come down to a practical thing. And you're right, the pasuk doesn't say how. Okay, this is another. Okay, this is okay. Side point. I'm going to go to another methodological side point here. Okay, Rabbi Moskowitz always has this statement that he says mischievously, that people always do a double take on. He says, "Don't should on me." Okay, and then people go, "What?" And he says, "No, don't should on me." Okay, like SHOULD. Okay, and Rabbi Moskowitz is very against shoulds. Okay, that if you try to discipline someone with shoulds, you should do this and you shouldn't do that, then it is it's not going to be as effective. Okay, and I wrote an article on how Mishlei takes that approach, and the Meiri makes this point. I'm not going to read the article right now, but I can post it. Is that most psukim in Mishlei, certainly in the first 24 chapters, okay, it changes after 25, but in 10 through 24, most psukim do not give you a direct command or direct instructions of do this and don't do this. He'll tell you, he'll depict the two results or the two decisions, and leave it up to you to figure out on your own what to do. Now that is a little frustrating because you want to know how to have a wise son, but it's the style, and we could talk some other time about like why that is. I just want to give you a little bit of a reason for why the pasuk doesn't say it. But you're also assuming something, which is you said that how can this tell me, you know, is this telling me this is not telling me how to have a wise son. Okay, so you're assuming that the pasuk is aimed at the parents. What's the other possibility?
The child?
Yeah, it's aimed at the child. So this is another question we have to ask on every pasuk. Who is the audience of this pasuk? Now, is there a reason why you assumed it's the parents, or was that just the default assumption? Like, was there a reason textually that led you to assume that?
I guess because I'm a parent, so I
okay,
just
right.
Default.
Okay, right. So that's that's a what do you call it? That is something that I think is built into Mishlei also. If you look at Mishlei in the intro again, then he does say that Mishlei is written for different audiences, and among the audiences are he specifies 4, even though there's more than that. A Pesi, who's a naive simpleton, a Na'ar, who is a youth, a Chacham, who is wise, and then a Navon, who is an understanding person. So you see that Mishlei is written for a Na'ar on the one hand, but it's also written for a Chacham and a Navon, who presumably are not a Na'ar. So it stands to reason that this might be aimed at parents, okay, or that a parent would read it as parental advice. Anyone know from Mishlei, just from Mishleic experience, why it would make sense to assume that it's aimed at the son? And if you've gone to Rabbi Zimmer's Mishlei,
everyone is a parent, but
that's also okay. So that's also true, right? Not everyone is a parent. That's like the flip side of what I was saying about in the first parak, is that, you know, if you're going to assume that this is a wide audience, then make it the widest audience possible. Anyone in Rabbi Zimmer shiur know, Mishlei shiur know why we might assume this is a son? So throughout chapters 1 through 9, Shlomo addresses the reader of Mishlei as my son. Okay, so that's the mashal he's using, and I don't think I've never seen anyone say that Shlomo was talking to his literal son, like Rechavam. I mean, if so, then that didn't turn out so well. But it's the figurative son that the student, a student is. A teacher is considered to be a parent to the student who's considered to be a child. So Shlomo talks to his reader regularly as my son, my son, my son. So when you get to chapter 10 and he says, why son gladdens his father? So then I think a natural way to read would be it's talking to the son, And by the way, Ayala, you're right, is that you're right in the sense that most Mefarshim take this as talking to the parents, but there are some who take it as talking to the son, which is why I'm pointing that out here. Okay. One more question, which is just like the basic question on the pasuk, which really this should go here, which is.
I actually realized I have another question.
Yeah, what's your question?
Is it saying that the wisdom of the son is the reason that is the source of the simcha, or is it that because he is wise he makes a decision to be misameach, and the reverse for the seal?
Okay, good. So I'm going to phrase this in a slightly broader way. How does that's the question I said we were missing here. So how exactly does the Ben Chacham cause his father or parents to be glad? And then similarly, how exactly does the Ben Ksil cause his mother / parents to feel grief, to be grieved? Is there a difference between grieved and aggrieved? Or are those just the same word? I don't know. I like aggrieved because there's two G's.
I don't think that grieves is a word.
Grieved?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't sound good. Okay. All right. So those are our questions here. So now we are in the with I don't know what is there. Wait, I know the schedule of the yeshiva.
I think 9 o'clock is Chavrusa time.
Okay, fine. So look, I don't know what is the equitable thing to do. I kind of want to have the rate of one pasuk per shiur. So I don't know if this is fair to the people who have to go at 9 o'clock, but I feel like we should extend this for about like 15 minutes or so. That way we can get in some discussion and then some idea. So if you miss it, it's going to be posted on YouTube. But yeah, I'd rather do that than rush through this now. Okay, so we'll extend the shiur a little bit.
It's okay.
So, yeah. All right. What do you got? Well, it's okay for you. I don't know if it's okay for everyone.
Well, I have a Chavrusa at 9. I'm gonna leave, but I'll listen.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's okay for you. I see. Okay, good. All right. Thank you. All right. So, anyone have any? So this is the part where you either try to answer specific questions, or you try to come up with one main idea that like answers all the questions, or answers like a swath of questions. So, anyone have any ideas?
I have a question. When you get
Yes.
to this part, I guess the thinking part, what do you do with the ambiguity in the like 1AB? Do you just decide I'll take one, or you think of an idea that will apply to both?
Oh, good question. Right. So if we had multiple translations, I don't know why Ariel Rahman just drew a line on the thing.
No, that's an accident. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't even aware that I had that available for people to do.
I don't know what happened.
Disable annotation for others. Okay. All right. I thought you were trying to like do some sort of code here. So Elisa's question was, when you have multiple translations, what do you do to choose? Like when you're thinking, like you're going to have to come up with an interpretation of one reading of the pasuk. So here we have like two candidates, so what do we choose? Okay. So here we have a three-way machlokas. It's not really a machlokas, but three options. Option number one is pick the one that comes easiest to you, the one that feels natural to you, or the one that like makes most sense to you. All right. And that makes sense because it makes sense. Like if your mind's already going in that direction, then why not pursue it? Rabbi Moskowitz's approach when we learned together, B'chavrusa, I don't think he did this in high school, but when we learned together was choose the more difficult one because it's more fun. Okay. Choose the one that doesn't seem to make sense to you and then go with that. And then the third approach is to ignore, this is going to sound weird, is ignore the question, like let both translations float around in your mind and work on something else. And then one of them will kind of like light up or like float down, you know, and like let your intuition choose based on like thinking out the other process. In other words, that third option is don't choose at the outset, just let your mind move around stuff. And that's what happens when you actually start answering questions, is that you find that, oh, maybe maybe as I'm thinking about it, this reveals that I should translate it the other way, and then you go back and forth. So those are your options. I'd say for tonight, maybe just to make things easier, let's go with the more difficult one here, okay? With B, that a wise son, and this is also the one that is most literal here. A wise son gladdens his father specifically, and a foolish son is the grief of his mother specifically. Okay, and most of the Mepharshim actually do take that way.
I have an approach.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna assume that we're not talking about like a child.
Okay.
I don't know at what age exactly would parents have these feelings for their children, but I don't know. I don't think it could be a toddler or a child. But maybe you can say, and I have a better answer for the foolish one, but maybe you can say that for why specifically mentions to it foolish son gives grief to his mother is because, and I think I'm basing this off a shiur I heard from somewhere, that the mother will always have like a certain love for her child. Even if he's like a Russia or like not a great person, because of the mother-child dynamic or whatever it is, it pains her that he is living this lifestyle, but at the same time, she loves him.
Okay, good.
Which is that's a conflict.
Yeah. Okay, good. And can you explain why the father has a greater joy from the son who's a chacham?
That could just be because the father would view his child as like someone who could replace him, as a legacy, and that's kind of like what I don't know. I don't really know the psychology behind the father, right. But like I could see myself, if I have a great son, I'll be like, I'm proud. I'm proud of you, son. Like you bring me joy.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. And okay. Good. So okay. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and that's definitely a possibility. And I want to hear from some other people before I show you the Mepharshim who echo what you say. Okay. But good. That's good intuition.
Thanks.
Anyone else have an approach to any of the questions here? Or the puzzle?
So I guess it's a little bit of a question, which is, so it sounds like based on what Ariel's saying that the way that he's understanding it is that the parents are happy or aggrieved about that their son is a chacham or a ksil.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being something that the son like does
right.
because of his, chachamness or ksilness.
Right.
So I don't know if it's exactly a question, but it seems to me like, where do you go from there to get like more of an idea? Like, it seems to me like the other way would be easier to like learn something more.
The other way meaning, yeah.
The son is like doing something.
Right. So the question, and this kind of like relates to Ayala's question, which is, okay, therefore what? Like, so if I have a son who's a chacham, then he's gonna make me proud. So what? Like, yeah. Okay, good. I hear what you're saying. So that's it's revealing also that like even according to Ariel, even though that it might work out good as an explanation for the cause and effect in the pasuk, it's not quite there in terms of an idea that Shlomo's teaching us, because it doesn't bring it home practically or even ideationally in terms of like what insight is giving us that's operational. Anyone else?
Yeah, if you're just talking about like a wise son that it's inborn, right? That's or a foolish son that's their natural state, and you don't pursue like what it is that is making them. Then it almost brings to mind like, this is going to sound weird, but like genetic engineering. Go shopping for the perfect child who's going to be the wise son, or is there You know, like it makes it sound like there's almost like it's set. That's it. It's a done deal, and you can't really. I don't know. You
Wait,
can't
I missed
really.
something. What is it about it that made you think, or that makes it sound like it's set?
If you're interpreting a ben chacham as he's gladdening his father because his natural tendency is
I
as
see.
ben chacham,
Right.
right? Not because there's something that he's
Right.
doing that is
Okay, good.
smart.
Yeah.
Then it's just like, okay, that's set from birth. Then parents, the practical advice is parents should shop around for a child that's going to be
Right.
you know.
Because otherwise, like, if not, then it's just the lottery. Like, okay, fine.
Right,
So
right.
you end up with a son who's a chacham. So what? And that's actually a good point here, which is that you know, because we're learning Mishlei as a book of decision making, there are going to have to be. It's going to have to be telling you advice about something that's within your control. So it doesn't mean that every element of the situation has to be in your control, but it has to. The advice he's teaching you has to be something that's within your control. So the point that you're making here does really work out that that just treating it as though the son just has natural chacham tendencies does not really seem to lend itself to a practical interpretation, because then it's just luck of the draw. Right. I agree with that. By the way, I just realized that is Ayala Cohen talking, right?
Yeah,
Or-
sorry about
Okay,
that.
good. No, good. Because I just now saw that it said Shoshana Cohen. I was like, oh no, is this some sort of guest that I don't know? And I just recognized your voice. But
No,
okay, good.
I gave the phone to my daughter for Zoom classes today.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I didn't address you in the with the wrong name. Okay, anyone else have any ideas here? Because maybe what we could do is I can show you. Yes.
Just another question that occurred to me from the answers you're starting to give is, it's if it's directed towards the parents, not the son.
Yeah.
It's very difficult that if there's some kind of relationship that the father has to the son different than the mother, that the pasuk's really giving advice to both the mother and the father, but they're not the same person. Like, it's not the same advice. Like, if the mother relates differently than a father does, then how do you have one piece of advice for both?
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good question, right? Meaning that even if you read the pasuk in, I mean, that's a question on the right. It's a question on right. Yeah, right. Yeah, is that's like not a disadvantage. Well, it's not a weak point, but it is a disadvantage. Is if you explain it to be too much like father son, mother son specific, then you end up with, why is this even in the same pasuk? Like, what advice is it giving to both of them? So there has to be some common ground. Yeah, that's a good point. So let me do this. Let me show you one of the Mefarshim who takes a similar approach to Ariel, not exactly the same, but similar. And then we'll work with that to try to come up with an idea, because fortunately he doesn't spell it out. Okay, so let's look at, hold on, the Rבינו Yona. Actually, you know what? We might as well read it in the Meiri. The Meiri and Rבינו Yona say similar things, and since we read half the Meiri, we'll do him the courtesy of reading him the rest. So he says, "O efshar levayir hena," or it's possible to explain here, "Shesimchas hamolidim beben chacham hu hatzlachas limudo." He says that the joy that comes to the parents of the ben chacham is success in his learning. V'zeh davar shehakarasu ubechinasu tluya ba'av. This is something where the recognition of it and the discernment of it, or the testing of it, is dependent on the father, meaning because he's the one who is halakhically responsible for educating the son, right, for teaching him. L'chein tala hasimcha ba'av, and that's why it ascribes simcha to the father. V'achar sheyichas hasimcha la'av, and again, it doesn't mean that the mother's not happy. It just means that both of them are happy that the son is a chacham, but the real happiness is in the father, because that's his domain, so to speak, you know. After it ascribes simcha to the father, then it ascribes the depression to the mother by way of eloquence. Sutu, with a foolish son who is persistent in his foolishness to the point where he gives grief to his parents. It's interesting. In the majority of children, this will not be completely revealed in the life of the father. Because the father is going to have a certain intimidation factor over the kid. V'lo tegale ra'aso kokach, and the kid's evil is not going to be as evident. But after the death of the father, tegale ra'aso, then his evil will become manifest, and then that's going to cause the mother to be depressed. Now, I don't think you have to go that far, okay? You could also say something like the Rבינו Yona says. So check out the short Rבינו Yona here. He says, okay, I'm just trying to move it around that blue line. Hizkir simchas ben chacham al ha'av, v'tugas haben haksil al ha'em. So it mentions the joy of the wise son on the father and the grief of the foolish son on the mother. Ki ha'av makir yoser b'chachmas habein. The father recognizes the chachma of the son more. Umavchin kol es b'divrei chachmaso, and is always testing or discerning his words of wisdom. The simchaso rabba mi simchas ha'em, and his simcha is greater than the simcha of the mother. So I like the way he says it here, because it's not that the mother doesn't have simcha, it's that the father is in a better position to appreciate it. So the mother knows more of the actions of the foolish son, because the involvements of the guzzler and the gorger, that's a reference to Ben Sora or More, like the low life kid, the deadbeat, is in the house of the mother. Okay, so in other words, the mother, like the father's off at work all day, and the deadbeat son, or the son who's like going and hanging out with gangs and stealing from people, like in the beginning of Mishlei, the mother sees all of that, so she has a greater exposure to the mother, to the son's activities. And then just one more along these lines, and then we'll try to work on an idea. So the נחמיאש says, Davar acher lefi shechoshtin habrios es ha'em kisheroim es bana holech b'derech lo tov. So they will have, they'll suspect the mother when people see that the son is not going on the right path. And I feel like that's the thing that people do, is right. Like what would your mother say, when a kid is like acting in a bad way, it's not like, it's like, for some reason, like people blame it on the mother. Maybe that's rooted in the reality that mothers are responsible for like the kids, midos or whatever, or like deeper psychological upbringing in terms of the way the kid reacts, whatever it is, that's that. So these are just samples of approaches for, in our 1B translation, oops, I lost it here, hold on. In our 1B translation, why it allocates the joy of the chachma to the father and the grief of the fool to the mother. But what we need to answer to get a complete idea is, what is the practical application of this pasuk? And let's assume that we're talking to the parent for now, just because I think that would be an easier way to approach things. So what is the practical application here?
The only practical application that I can think of is maybe you would use this as guidance when you're raising the kid.
Okay, good. So let's now apply that then. Okay, so before learning this pasuk, okay, and this is what we call the Mishlei Hava Amina. Okay, this is a maneuver here. Okay, is what would we have thought before we learned this pasuk? And because I think people know this, right? Like people know that if you have a son who's wise, then you'll make your dad happy, and like a deadbeat son is going to make his mother upset, So what would we have thought, and why do we need to hear this? And like, what exactly is this changing? What's the chiddush,
I think this is influenced by the previous time that I've learned this pasuk.
Okay.
But I think parents can make decisions that, as they help shape the personality of the child.
Yeah.
And so if a parent might want to do things that are beneficial in the short term, but aren't good parenting decisions in the long run, and that then they'll produce a child who's a ksil instead of a chacham, and like this is, I think they think like, oh, it's not like there's no harm to it, but this is showing the long term harm.
Okay, good. All right. Anyone else want to add to that? Because that's very much in line with the way I understand the pasuk, but I'm going to take it a little bit further. Okay, so here's what I think. Oh, yeah. Someone say something? Okay, so here's what I think, and I might need to talk this out a little bit here. Okay, so what governs most parents' parenting decisions? Okay, and the people who are parents can testify to this, both from their own experience or from others. I think it is accurate to say that most parents' parenting decisions in the world, I'm talking about, right, are determined by two sets of considerations. One is parents want their kids to succeed. Okay, I don't think, unless they have some sort of like messed up thing, like then where they like resent the kid's success, parents want their kids to succeed. And then the other factor is their own personal pleasure and pain. Okay, is that like often like what Isaac's saying is that many times a parent will basically be faced with a decision of, do I suffer pain right now in order to do what is going to be right and produce a son who is like, who's, a good parenting decision, or do I just do what's easy to just get the kid to stop crying, or or just not, set up my life in a way where I don't have to really like confront these things and just do what is the most immediately pleasurable to me and the most avoids the most immediate pain. I feel like those are the two overriding concerns. So what Shlomo is doing here is he's giving some very Mishlei parenting advice. Okay, if you looked at a Torah book on parenting, okay, like mainstream Torah, classical Torah, and said, why should you raise a good son? They'd say, because the son's going to be learning Torah, and the son is going to have mitzvos, and the son is going to like avoid doing averos. What does Shlomo say? It's going to make you happy, and it's going to not make you depressed. Okay. And what is he saying here? And here's the chiddush, okay, which is most parents, when they're looking for success for their kid, have a very specific idea of what that success looks like. Like Ariel mentioned, parents who want, like fathers who want a legacy, like they want a kid who's going to succeed in either in the same way I succeeded or in the same way that I didn't succeed. And like, you need to succeed and I need to live through you, or like the parent who's an athlete is going to like force athletic success on his kid, or like parent who has certain like social, like to be someone who's like a respectable person in the community, he's going to want that for his kid. And he's going to impose that view of success on his kid. Now, what's going to happen is that many times that's not going to work out, because he's interacting with the kid in a way where he's making decisions based on a certain image that he wants the kid to be molded into. He's not actually interacting with the reality of the kid. Okay, so it's going to backfire. He won't get the success that he seeks, and the kid is going to end up causing him pain because the kid's not going to turn out well. So what does Shlomo say? He says that you should have one goal as a parent, okay? Help your kid to become a chacham. And when your kid is a chacham, he will be able to succeed in any field, because that's what chachamim do, okay, is that they can operate in any area and have like intelligent decision making. Doesn't mean he's going to be the tippy top of the thing, but you're giving him the greatest chances of being an all-around successful person, and you will be happy. In the long run, yes, you're going to have to endure like the crying kid right now to teach him self-control, like in order to be able to find happiness later on. But you are doing this, you're not doing this for some sort of ideal. You're doing this for your own happiness, is just long-term happiness. And same thing with the Ben Ksil, is that like, your goal should be to not produce a kid who is a Mishlei Ksil, which we have not defined yet. And Mishlei goes on and defines that. In fact, I don't really want to define it here. But if you don't equip your kid correctly, so the kid will turn out to be a failure by your standards and will cause you grief, So the idea here, and the reason why he's not telling you how to do it, is that's the entire, like, that's all the other psukim about parenting, But before you do any other psukim about parenting in specific, you need to know what your goal is. And the goal is to not impose your own standards of success on the kid to mold him into something that like is a narrow version of that's going to make you happy. That's going to backfire. You rather should aim in your parenting to make them into a chacham, so that you can get the long-term pleasure and so that they can be successful in whatever endeavor they put their mind to. So that's an idea for the parents.
Rabbi Shneworth?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I understand how you're setting it up, that there's that there one important drive is avoiding your own pain and pleasure, and one is seeing success in a kid.
Yeah.
But why are you going so far to say that the mistake is that you're putting your view of success onto your kid, as opposed to just saying you're not setting him up to be a chacham, whatever that means, and you're choosing your short-term pain, pleasure versus your long-term pleasure? Like, why are you going the extra step? What's making you go the extra step? I don't see that.
So I think I learned this pasuk a while in the summer, so I don't remember per se, but I'm gonna guess is that when the Rabinu, Yona, and the not the Rabbag, and the Meiri put the emphasis on hatzlacha, on seeing the kid's success in learning. We were talking about, well, why, like, how did this work? We were asking ourselves, why are they putting an emphasis on that? Hatzlachas limudo. And so what we assumed was that even though Mishlei is a book about practical decision making, it is written for the Jews, you know, in Judaism, then Talmud Torah is like the main thing. But we noted that he was talking about like the father wanting to see his son succeed. And when we were thinking about what mistake this pasuk is aimed to uproot, we realized that that's also part of the part of the mistake is real. And it was like this: there's only one true success as a human, which is becoming a chacham, and if a person didn't have this pasuk, they're going to be aiming for some vision of success that they're going to be imposing on their kid. In other words, we didn't get this from the pasuk. We got this from what would a person do without the pasuk, and we noticed that any parent is going to be aiming at, I want my kid to be successful by some metric. In America, it's I want them to make a lot of money. Like in other places, I want them to like serve their government. And, you know, so there's going to be some vision of success, and that's when we realized that like Shlomo is just proposing a new paradigm of success, which is success as a chacham. So we weren't getting it from the text of the pasuk. We were getting it from the need for the pasuk and what would happen without the pasuk, if that makes sense. It's an unusual way to get that. It's a good point. And I think that point came, by the way, my Mishlei Chavrusa for this pasuk was Ken. That was a very Ken type move, very creative. So that the credit goes to him for that. If we still have time, I just want to give one pasuk, one interpretation of the pasuk for the kid. Okay, and I'm going to give a controversial one. All right.
Sorry, could I ask one more question about this last idea?
Yeah.
So is this two ideas? Like, is it an idea about like thinking about your kids' long-term way they're going to grow up when you're making parenting decisions, and then also the fact that like what exactly does it mean to have your kid be successful and how will it make you happy? Like,
I actually, the way I'm learning it is that the mafarshim that we learn are just supplying the facts of how it's going to make you happy. And that's not part of the idea. It's just given just an assumption that like when a parent sees a kid, like we actually went even one step further when Ken and I were learning it, that like the Revina Yona and the Meiri seem to be putting the chachma in terms of learning. We were taking it in terms of Mishlei chachma, of just chachma and decision making, you know? So it's going to be a given that like a parent wants to see a kid like having a good life and like succeeding in their stuff. So that we were learning is like just part of the facts, not really the idea. The real idea is like the parenting philosophy that my goal should be to produce a kid who's successful as a chacham, and I'm not trying to change my motives. My motive is still pleasure. It's just realizing that the pleasure is going to come in the future. Yeah. And again, the don't should on me is a big part of this. Like again, I'm not a parent, so I can't say this, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure about what you should make your kids into, what the shoulds for you as a parent of like, well, a good mom does this and a good dad does that. And there's a lot of like social pressure. And Shlomo this is easier said than done, obviously, but Shlomo is basically saying like, look, if you're in America and you're considered to be a bad father if your kid goes to vocational school instead of like law school, ignore that. Like that has nothing to do with the kid's actual success and nothing to do with the kid's happiness and nothing to do with your happiness. Really having the kid do whatever he needs to become a chacham, that's really what that's your guiding principle here. And like, if that means that the kid goes to vocational school and like has a job as like something that is not like a Jewish job, then that's what you do. Or if like it means that your kid is not gonna like, wear shoes in public, until like they're a certain age, then like, and the other parents are gonna like look at you as a failure, that's their problem. That's not your problem. Like whatever makes your kid into a chacham, So it's like the main idea is like proposing this new parental paradigm. Yeah.
So, okay, sorry, maybe I'm just to clarify.
Sure.
Is the main idea kid being a chacham versus kid being whatever your previous idea of success was? Or is the main idea like kid being a chacham versus your short-term pleasure when the kid is 2 or whatever?
I think it's both. I think it's saying, and I know that that's a little inelegant, but I see the elements of both of it because it does emphasize the tugas imo, the pain, and it does emphasize, in other words, it's the pain of watching your kid be a lowlife. In other words, she suffered, she did the immediately pleasurable thing, or they did the immediately pleasurable thing in the upbringing of the kid, only to result in pain in the future. And then the first half of the puzzle is emphasizing the happiness of the success, and it is happiness of success. Like I think it is tied to that. Like, so I am learning that it's both. Yeah, I need to think about it a little bit more, but that's currently how I'm learning it. So one idea about if you're saying this to a kid. Now, I saw Mefarshim say that this is telling a kid that a kid should strive to be a chacham because it'll make his parents happy and kibbud aim. Okay, maybe, I don't know. I felt that was a little shallow, and maybe I'm just not getting the ideas here. So we one time I took an interesting course, an interesting approach in this pasuk. So this is laseis lepisaim arma. Okay, to give cunning to pisaim, to simpletons. So cunning is an interesting quality in Mishlei. I'm not going to define it here, but cunning is something that in Tanakh is both good and bad. So in Mishlei, the good is highlighted, but who is the evil, cunning character in Tanakh? Arum.
Lavan. Aramio. Lavan.
Is he referred to as Arum? Is that true?
Lavan was Arami Ovidavi. Right?
Well, that's Arami, but that's an Aramean, right? This is Arum with an ayin, cunning.
The
The Nachash, right? So the Nachash is so that's cunning for evil, right? So we're not going to define cunning. We'll wait till we get to a puzzle that does that. So if you wanted to be a cunning kid, okay. So I'm gonna tell you this as this came to me as an idea for the kid, but then I'll make it into an idea about the parent also. This is a second idea here, okay? Is you see from the Rבינו Yona and from the Meiri that parents have their blind spots, okay? That the father's blind spot is the behavior of the foolish son, and the mother's blind spot is the success of the chacham son. Like how is the son doing chachma wise, and the father's blind spot is how is the kid doing behavior wise. So a cunning piece of advice for the kid is, and kids figure this out in general, but like recognizing, like when you first are in the world and you're growing up, you feel like your parents are all knowing and all seeing, and there is a certain awareness of the blind spot that your parents have in certain areas. And that if you want to be a kid and get stuff from your parents or appeal to your parents' good side, so then you got to play their blind spots. When it comes to your father, then you're going to have to play up the chachma angle and use that. And when it comes to your mother, you're going to have to really like put forward your best foot and be on your best behavior to make her happy and conceal the stuff that is not as good. Now, why might you need this? Again, so I don't want to go into the whole philosophy of Orma, but the stage of Orma is one in Mishlei where basically it is a stage towards Chachma that involves awareness of people's emotions. And Mishlei channels that towards becoming a Chacham. If you leave that without Mishlei, you'll become a Rasha. And you can see from this how you could become a Rasha. But tying this to a different idea, the idea of blind spots, this is also a good advice for parenting as well, which is that according to let's just take the pasuk and you can apply it elsewhere also, that the father needs to recognize that he might know what's going on in the chachma world of his kid, but he doesn't necessarily have a full picture of what's going on in the behavior world. And the mother has to realize the opposite is, the opposite is true. And the only way to compensate for these blind spots is for the parents to work together to essentially, to compensate for each other's blind spots, to make sure that the kid gets well-rounded development on both fronts, And as a high school teacher, I've seen this happen, I've seen this not happen. Like you do see sometimes where like the mother is completely aware of all of the like social issues that are going on with the kid and like, you know, mental health issues, and the father's just completely oblivious. And if the parents are not working together, that can actually be very bad for the kid, you know, because the father is going to treat it. He's not aware of his blind spot. He's going to treat it as though he has, like, I'm the kid's father. Like, of course I know what's going on, or of course I'm capable of weighing this. But really, he should defer to his wife, or his wife should like present the situation to him in a way that he can understand it and hear it, so that they can work together and have a common picture. And then similarly, like there have been mothers who just have absolutely no clue what it means for the kid to develop in learning, and like the father does know, but the mother thinks that she knows, and she just has no experience with that. So again, how that works in the modern world when the roles are a little bit more not as cleanly divided, like you got to work it out in your particular family, but that's another idea of parenting here, that it's making you aware of the blind spots and to compensate. Okay, so we got 3 ideas there, or 2.5 ideas, 2 ideas and a cunning strategy. Yeah. All right. So so this is an example of learning Mishlei according to Sadigon's method on the surface level. Again, this can be taken as a mushal, but in this year, we're really not going to focus on the mushal aspect of it, at least most of the time. Okay, so I'll stay around if anyone has any questions, but I guess we're officially done for now.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I have strawberries and whipped cream?
What do you think about this approach? I mean, it feels shallow to me a little bit,
Sure.
but I just keep coming back to it. From the approach to answering advice for an adult son,
Yeah.
where sometimes like I think a kid could think, or an adult, but can think that, you know, your parents are your parents, and that you're raised, and whatever you're seeking for, and that's really what's going to make you can bring you satisfaction. But
Yeah.
that it seems like the way your parents feel about you, for a lot of people, is a very important feeling. It can weigh on a person in both directions. Like you could be a success whenever you pursued, but if your parents hate you for whatever reason or something, you know. So like the recognizing that isn't like if you're gonna go and follow your emotions, that you're gonna have a part of you that's gonna be have your parents disappointed in you. That's something that's gonna cause you pain, even if you're chasing whatever you're trying to chase, you know.
Yeah, so I definitely think that's a true idea. I think the reason why I wouldn't buy that as a shot of the pasuk is because it is only putting the emphasis. I mean, okay, I see where I'll say my problem, but it's not like a knockout problem. My problem is it's only putting the emphasis on the emotions experienced by the parents, and it's not. I don't see an allusion. I don't see any like pointing to that being a factor in your decisions. But then what you're saying really is that is why it's talking to the son, because it is saying that this should be a factor, or it
Right.
is a factor in your decisions, you know, and you should
don't ignore it. Like
Don't ignore it, yeah.
it'll affect your happiness if you're chasing whatever you're chasing and not
Right.
accounting for that.
So maybe what's bothering me is the same thing that's bothering me. I think the thing that's bothering me is just the consequence in the pasuk is not spelled out for the fool in the pasuk. Like according to your approach, the fool is the person who does not take this into account, and the pasuk doesn't talk about that. So it's a good idea. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, yeah. Thanks for joining. You and I used to learn Mishlei in yeshiva.
I remember very, very well.
Yeah, I can't even remember what years that was. That was a long time ago.
I could reverse back the years.
Yeah.
2008, something like that. But
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and then that's Mishlei with you again.
Very impactful.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording, people, and I'll just stay on in case anyone wants to.